Really exciting news for you today, folks. Today we're unveiling Dave Morrow PT is part of a awesome new study through the University of British Columbia, and we're going to be looking at the importance of PT for veterans' health. So today I have on the lead researcher, Dr. Mark Beauchamp, who is going to be explaining why the PASS and PACE program are going to be so important moving forward. Additionally, we have Rupert Whitting on, member of Treble Victor Group, and one of the key initiators of this collaboration. An episode not to miss, and if you want to get involved right away on these programs, we can head to passprogram.ca and get yourself all the details on that program. And if you're interested in getting onto the PACE program, which is using our very own Athena program, you can send an email to pace.study@ubc.ca. Welcome, folks, to another episode of the Hard to Kill podcast. Got two distinguished guests on today. We're going to be talking about two programs that are going on right now for the betterment of veteran health. First on the panel today, we've got Rupert. Rupert Whitting is a former British Army officer now living in Vancouver, who is working with UBC to study the impact on veteran health and well-being of providing something as cheap as something as a weekly game of ball hockey. Rupert joins us to discuss the PASS program and how veterans across Canada can sign up as participants in this first of a kind, academically robust study. Additionally, I've got Dr. Mark Beauchamp. He is the professor of exercise and health psychology at University of British Columbia and the lead researcher of the PASS and PACE study. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast. I really appreciate you guys taking some time to sit down and chat with me today, because we're doing something pretty interesting here. Like, this is pretty cool. This is a combination of, the research, like the public side stuff, and private with, my company here at Dave Morrow PT. So, Rupert, let's start with you, because I know you're a busy man. You got things on the go. So let me just ask you, like, what got you, or what's your driving force to get involved on the veteran health side of things and be involved in these programs?
Hi, thanks for having us on, Dave. So, as you know, I'm the sort of chapter lead with Treble Victor out in Vancouver. So I've always been interested in helping veterans thrive more in their second careers, and specifically veterans who don't identify as having mental or physical sort of issues. I spent 10 years in the British Army, and I don't consider myself to be damaged by the experience, but I still have my struggles in sort of civvy street. So I look at things through that lens, whether they were struggles in civvy street that Army generated or just me generated. It's kind of not really the issue, but I know that there's a lot of guys like me out there, guys and girls like me out there, who found a real family in the Army and miss it when they're gone. Now, of course, you sort of fight and bicker in the family too, but sometimes, like, I'm 20 years out of the Army and I still miss it a little bit. So Mark and I have been good friends for many years, and he mentioned sort of one night over some wine about stitching together things that he knew from his academic studies and what I was doing with veterans and what I was focusing on with veterans. And he came up with the idea of doing this ball hockey thing. It sort of resonated that if we got guys into a gym exercising in a way that they don't normally do, sort of level of intensity with people that they got on with. And what's funny is I'm British, as you can hear, 10 years British Army. I found the Canadian guys who I played hockey with in the pilot just the same as the guys I used to love hanging out with in the British Army, right? So there's that sort of sense of belonging that goes along with it. And that's a long way of saying it's like it was a confluence of a bunch of different things, but it's about looking after guys who are not living their necessarily 100% best lives in civvy street.
Love it. So ultimately, like, what's the main intent here? Like, you've gotten involved with, PT. Obviously, it's something that you're really passionate about. You're also passionate about, obviously, military issues and making sure that individuals have a better life moving forward. And you've had your own lived experience with that. What's really the intent here with I believe it's the PASS program, right? And could you explain the PASS program from your perspective a little bit better as well?
Sure. Purpose After Service Through Sport was the name we came up with it. And it's just sort of like connecting people back to the best bits of their army experience without a lot of the worst bits of it. So it's like using sport as the conduit to get people to exercise, to get them to connect, to get them. I mean, what we found in the pilot was that we then had access to them to tell them about BCIT and UBC programs, and people were much more receptive when they're hanging out with people who they respond to, and we can reach them in ways that a lot of these agencies, there's so many agencies who've got great programs for veterans who struggle to get them to have their ears open. We found that through PASS, people were more receptive to the help that's already available to them. So the overall aim is to find ways of making people just have get more out of it. It being life and what's available to them.
There's a lot of similarities to other conversations I've had, and to reference a book that I really, really, really enjoy, which probably maybe you've read it yourself, but by Sebastian Junger, called Tribe, where he describes, the military service and the idea of like wanting to go back to war and not feeling comfortable being back home, even though things are great, things are comfortable, you have everything you possibly want, you're not getting mortared, you're not getting shot at. But it's that idea that we no longer have that tribe accessible to us anymore, because my let's say war tribe, I don't see any of them other than the occasional interaction on Facebook, but they're all like, they're Americans, they're Canadians, they're all over the planet. They're nowhere near me geographically. So to have kind of like a core nucleus rebuilt of like-minded individuals doing something like sport, which is fun, there's also a bit of risk, there's some competitiveness. What have you seen so far with respects to the individuals that are participating in that? Because until I met you, I had never heard of any program like this, other than ones that we would kind of put together on our own, where we kind of hang out and maybe have a few beers, maybe play some poker. That's not a set program. What are you seeing from the individuals that are participating in this program? How's that turning out for them?
Well, so there's a couple of really good case studies from the pilot that we ran in Vancouver back before COVID, nixed it all. So there's two guys were soldiers from Alberta, and then through injuries they migrated to the West Coast with the better weather and so forth. And another guy had come over from Ontario. They had no military family here. They turn up, they play a bit of ball hockey, and it's not competitive ball hockey, but you do get a sweat on. And they found great friendships and more motivation and things. So it's just like, it's hanging out with people who get you, people who can tolerate a war story, people who understand, all the acronyms that you talk about. So it was just having that, that tribe that you're talking about, and those kind of kindred spirits, people who you just sort of you get at a level that people who haven't served don't get.
Right on. And so now that's the PASS program. We've also migrated now to the PACE program. And Mark, I'll ask you after I get Rupert's answer on this, but why now create a new program that now serves women, that uses this kind of online platform moving forward? What's the kind of the impetus to now move out and branch out even further?
Well, I'll let Mark give you the academic answer, but what we found from the pilot was no women attended. It wasn't an alluring event for female veterans to attend, and we can't go around just doing things just for men. Although I'll let Mark sort of speak to that from an academic point of view. So we actively sought a program for women. So I'll mute myself now and let Mark take over.
Excellent. Right on. So Mark, again, thanks for deciding to come on the podcast and have a chat. This is going to be really important moving forward, because we're establishing something here that hasn't been done, as far as I know, in Canada. And I guess further to Rupert's point, you decided to create two programs with a research focus. I guess let's just start with the PACE program. Yeah. Why create this female-based program, and then we can go back to the PASS program and kind of get to the nucleus of all of this getting started.
Super, great. Well, thanks, Dave, for having me on. Really delighted to be here. So I'll perhaps be less eloquent than Rupert. I'm not a military person by background, although my father was in the Gurkhas for 30 years. So I am, I think in Canada, they call them army brat. So I have a family background in this. And but my background is I do work in the psychology of groups and group processes and there's this growing body of evidence that points to the fact when people have a shared sense of identity, shared experiences, then it supports their long-term psychological mental health. And as a point of contrast, the Movember Foundation, which I think many of you will be familiar with, conducted a review of programs to support veterans' health and well-being. And they identified that the overall, the quality of research that had been applied in this space had been generally of low quality. And that's something we're trying to rectify with some of the designs we're doing. But also a particular note and relevance to your question is that most of the programs weren't taking what's called a gender sensitized approach to those interventions. So I'll deviate a little bit, but I will come back to the direct relevance here. So as a point of contrast, there have been some studies in the UK, for example. There's one called Football Fans in Training, which was a program designed to support overweight and obese men. And they deliver these programs in soccer clubs in Scotland, and soccer clubs, for those who know anything about British culture, often one sense of identity is very much intertwined with those. Where they found that when people identified with those clubs, they're more likely to stick with them, and they found clinically significant and substantive benefits in terms of weight loss, in terms of quality of life, and so on. So what we've done with both studies, and I'll try not to dance around a bit between the two, but what we're trying to do with both projects is to really tap into the importance of making sure these programs are gender sensitized. So back to Rupert's point, when we put together the PASS project initially, or program, we ran it as a pilot. We really had no idea whether it would stick, whether it would be good uptake. You know, that's why you do these sorts of programs, to see, are they feasible, are they acceptable, and so on. And so initially, when I was chatting with a couple of veterans who work up at UBC, I was talking about my background in groups and group dynamics, and we were also at the time running a separate program in Australia called Man v Fat. So it's a soccer-based program, but it's for overweight and obese men. And so I threw out the idea of, hey, how about a touch rugby program? And they looked to me as though I was speaking Swahili and thought, you have no idea what you're talking about. Rugby's not the sport to be played in Canada. So, but they said, but ball hockey, they play on deployment. They play at every base, every armory, everywhere. It's happening all the time. So we said, okay, well, let's pick a sport which is culturally relevant, which seems to be bull hockey, and let's see if we can use sport with a low barrier to involvement. So we were mindful that, can we put in place something right from the outset that's potentially scalable, that's low cost, low barriers, and then so that the CO at the Armory of the Seaforth Highlanders was really supportive of us, and so it meant that there was no cost to participation, there was no parking fees. They could just simply turn up, and we said, listen, just turn up, sweat, socially connect, and have fun, and that's it. There's no ulterior motive or agenda. And what we found by doing this is that we normalize conversations around things like mental health, around transition and struggles that veterans might have. As Rupert mentioned, we open this up for everyone, and we really hoped that we'd have men and women involved, and women were less interested. And at around the same time that we were running that project, that review paper from the Movember Foundation came out, which pointed to the importance of gender sensitized programs. We're also aware of these other programs, and one of which I was involved with, the Man v Fat program in Australia, which really pointed to the power of a shared sense of identity and connectivity. And I think in the pilot program, we found that because it ended up being an all-male program, I think the men felt more comfortable talking about some of these challenges. We also know from the research literature that men are generally very reluctant to seek help from one another. It's interesting too, is if you say if you ask a man, hey, do you want help? He's struggling mentally, they'll say, no, I'm good, thanks. Suck it up, and all the standard sort of terminology that one uses. But if you put it out to them, hey, there are some people that are struggling, if you take part, you'll be helping others. Do you want to help out? And they said, of course I will. I'd love to help out. So what we found that by being in a same gender context really helped both psychological flourishing. Now, the pilot project was a qualitative study, so we can't infer causality, whether it causally had an effect on these outcomes, but it pointed to and was suggestive of these outcomes. So that's why we use that as the basis for this larger scale trial that we're now rolling out. And I'll talk to that in a minute. But why I mention that is because, obviously in conversations with you, Dave, and your organization, we saw an opportunity to really support women veterans' health as well. But can we evaluate the extent to which a program that's for women, that's by women veterans, and so if it's led by a women veteran, that harnesses the power of physical activity and exercise, and there's the evidence is just so compelling around the benefits of exercise and physical activity, both for a range of psychological benefits and also physical benefits. So can we develop a parallel or a sister program? And that's what PACE is. So PACE is purpose after service through connectivity and exercise. And so that project's at a pilot stage, but we are recruiting for that, and we're evaluating that program as well. Now, the difference being with the PACE project, it's delivered online. About 14% of the Canadian Armed Forces are women, so much smaller proportion than men. But what this allows us to do is to access women who might be geographically quite dispersed, whereby they'll be provided with a program to exercise and be active independently, but also on the weekends or once a week, they'll connect with other women with shared experiences of having served together and examining the extent to which exercise and connectivity, and also using this group-based format to link them to other resources and support programs available. To what extent does that support their health and well-being? So that's in essence, that's the crux of those two programs. But where we're at with the PASS program, and I should probably maybe get a bit of a plug in here. If people are interested in this, they should really go to, it's passprogram.ca. So that's www.passprogram.ca. And information, we can certainly talk to some of the details with that. But if people are interested in participating, or if they know of anyone else that's a veteran, or they think that someone might benefit, please help us to get the word out, because we are recruiting right now. And what we're recruiting for is what's called a randomized controlled trial. So our pilot study was a qualitative small scale study. It was around 15 veterans who we interviewed. What we're looking to do across the country, so that's 9 locations from almost coast to coast, so Esquimalt in BC, Edmonton in Alberta, then Shiloh, then Petawawa, Kingston, Borden, and then French-speaking Quebec, French-speaking Canada, French-speaking Canadians in Valcartier and Montreal, and then New Brunswick, where we have Gagetown. So if you look at the map of where we're doing this, we're evaluating this in geographically diverse parts of the country. But what a randomized trial allows us to do is evaluate the extent to which this program actually has an effect on a veterans' well-being, and to what extent does it actually support the extent to which veterans make use of resources through Veterans Affairs and other organizations. So we've got this is definitely a team effort. We have a team of physicians, we have psychologists, we have statisticians, we have veterans themselves. So Rupert's working with us on the trial as the military liaison, and at each site we're also working with the PSP folks, the personnel support program folks within the military, to help us deliver these programs. But the program's a simple one. We're not trying to overtly complicate this. It's a simple one, which is turn up for ball hockey once a week and socially connect. And we know that the power of social connectivity is so prominent and pervasive. There was what's called a meta-analysis, so that these studies synthesize across all studies that have been out there, and they found that when people are provided with access to programs that foster a sense of connectivity, it results in really quite substantive benefits in terms of reductions in anxiety, depression, as well as physical health outcomes as well. So in essence, that's what we're trying to do. I'll maybe stop there because I feel I've been rambling for a while. Typical academic, can't shut them up. So I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Professor. Yeah, absolutely. I don't blame you. You got a lot of excitement and a lot of passion for these 2 research projects. I get it. just the whole idea that there isn't that much, and maybe you can correct me on this, but there isn't that much or any research that I've come across that really focuses on veteran well-being, but not with respect to just mental health programs, but with physical health translating into greater mental health. Now, as you know, a listener, I think most people understand when you're physically healthy, we feel better, you know, look good, feel good, do good. It just seems like common sense, but there's not much research from what I've seen that focuses on that other element. That was part of the reason why I got into business, was because I saw a lack, a need. I was working on my mental health. I had all the support I need. I still have all the support I need, but there was just that one pillar that was missing. And the pillars that I'm talking about are the mental health, physical health, and spiritual health. That's kind of how I see like kind of like the three pillars of holding up the individual. Now, the spiritual health I take care of on my own. The mental health, I get help from Veterans Affairs, but the physical side of thing, there wasn't really anything there. And then I came across some research in the United States that was showing some really promising evidence that those individuals that were physically active before going into, let's say, their psychologist's appointment or their therapist appointment, were seeing incredible improvement longitudinally. And I don't know if you can speak to that, but is there more research afoot here in Canada, or is this kind of, are you at the pointy edge of the stick when it comes to research here in Canada with respects to seeing improvements in just global mental health, physical health issues for veterans through a particular study like this one, which is actually focusing on not just qualitative, but quantitative data as well?
Yeah, so there are a few points, and I'll try and be more succinct than I was in my last rambling piece. But I think there are a few pieces I think it's worth highlighting. First of all, so there are programs in Canada for ill and injured veterans. So Soldier On is one and offers programs specifically for that group. Now, in the past program, we certainly support ill and injured, but it's not as specifically for ill and injured veterans. It may simply be for those who are transitioning out of the military, or maybe those who have already transitioned out of the military and simply just want to connect. We know that within our pilot study, some had actually had quite a negative experience in the army. It was almost that sort of interesting paradox. Some were a bit disaffected, but also had still a strong sense of self tied to it. And so when they came back and they realized there were others who had same experiences, same sort of mindset, and they realized, you know what, we had a bit of a shitty experience with this, but you know what, we're sort of brothers in arms. It's that sort of, we're in this together. We've had these shared lived experiences. We can talk about this, and we can, tell stories of yours, so X and Y we've done. So, and so what I think is worth highlighting, it is a program, there is data, and I'll point to that in terms of the benefits of physical activity, but it's not a treatment program per se. I mean, what the program does look to do is, if there are veterans who would benefit from counseling services, we'll refer on in. What we also know is, if you speak with someone who's struggling with mental health and you say, hey, do you want to see a psychologist? They say, no, I'm good, thanks. But if they're exposed to a program and people are talking about, hey, here's this program, it's a physical activity program, and they hear of opportunities to be linked with counseling or education or financial support or housing and whatever, it just normalizes those conversations. And so I would consider this program, it's a broad church, so to speak. We're trying to support veterans, period. And some may say, you know what, I'm not struggling, but I just want to connect and play sport, and that's completely fine. We're not trying to force an agenda on someone. But if someone thinks, you know what, I might benefit from some of these programs, I'm not sure what they are, but if I just turn up and hear what others are doing and what they have to say, then it might be for them as well. So it's really this broad piece around supporting veterans, with transition or pre-transition. It is open to currently serving as well as veterans. The primary target is veterans. And so I would say to those who are currently serving, if they think they can take part and support others by taking part, we welcome those as well. So we really welcome this broad church from currently serving to veterans. And then in terms of the program itself, what we found, some of the other examples with the pilot study, we found some who pointed to, there are a couple of people who said, the program acted as a spur to me to become more active. I turned up to exercise. It's once a week. So we're not trying to have this whereby, it's 5 times a week and it make the bar is so high, but turn up once a week, sweat for an hour and a half. And the players themselves decided when the game was over, when they'd had enough. And sometimes it went on and sometimes they said, yeah, no, I'm good. Thanks. We need to stop. But it provided with a spur to say, you know what? Being in shape and getting in shape feels good. So what can I do to become more active and so on? So, and so to your original question around the benefits of physical activity, it's just so compelling, the data now around the benefits of physical activity. I have a colleague at UBC, Professor Guy Faulkner, who does work around exercise and depression, and the World Health Organization now points to physical activity as the best buy you can get. It's the best bang for your buck in terms of mental health outcomes. So the data's there. It's really compelling, and that's in essence what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that. The element of being physically active. There's no better antidepressant. I mean, I'm back in the gym finally because they're open again, and I can say confidently that my mental health has improved significantly in the last how long? I think it's been a month now. Yeah, about a month that we've been back open. So that's that I know that's anecdotal, but I mean, there's plenty of actual evidence to suggest that that's the case. Now, Rupert, I want to shift to you, and I want to just ask you, why on earth did you decide to reach out to me and get me involved in this awesome study, this awesome program that you guys are putting together, and kind of the genesis story as to like why all 3 of us are here today?
Well, I think that your demographic, the people who so I've done one of your programs, as you know, and your demographic is me. Ex-army or ex-military people who've maybe let themselves slip a little bit. Some of us have fallen harder than others, and it's like it's the me's of this world who we're reaching out to, and they're connected to you through your podcast. So that's why we want to connect with those people. Like Mark said, maybe didn't have a great end to careers. We both put our hands up when that was sort of said, but hanker for the tribe, veterans who, we're not getting any younger. This helps. It's really helped. It helps mental health wise. And I just want to say that I don't identify as having a mental health problem, but I have mental health issues, if that makes sense. So we want to reach those kind of people too. You don't have to be under treatment. You don't have to be diagnosed with anything, but the world's a tough place right now, and the PASS program and hopefully the PACE program for women is a great start of a place to start turning that into that vicious cycle into a virtuous circle.
Love it. In my opinion,
maybe just chip in with one point I think Rupert alluded to, but I'll take it a little bit further. I think it's this difference between sort of ill-being and well-being piece. And so one is there's data that points to the benefits of exercise and connectivity in reverting or offsetting ill-being, psychological ill-being, but it's also this piece around flourishing. So if people who are doing fine and going about their day-to-day lives, but they might benefit even more so through psychological flourishing, I think these sorts of programs can certainly be very beneficial in that regard.
Beauty. I was just about to say, like, in my opinion, I guess that's my I call it sardonic or just brutal infantry humor. Like, if you don't have mental health issues, you're not trying hard enough. You're going to get in the mix. Life is hard, right? So not necessarily being diagnosed, like you said there, Rupert, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've got my issues too, and you work through them, and then that's the beauty of life, in my opinion, is to overcome. Right? Once you overcome, man, it feels so good. So I guess now we're on the topic of the PACE program and how we're integrating the Athena program that we got started here with Audrey, my head coach, really putting together just a stellar program. And initially we started with the Quebec Veteran Foundation, which decided that our program was worthy of funding, which was great. So that was last year. We started with 5 women, and now we've even got Veterans Affairs to say, hey, we like this program. We're going to give you a little bit more money too. and couple that now with what we're doing here. What was the allure, I guess, because the PACE program right now, as we're setting it up, we're about to get started soon. We're putting the candidates on the onboarding train. What was the allure, I guess, to the online platform that we already had set up so that you can move forward with a PACE program? I guess I'll Mark, I'll shoot that to you, and then Rupert, I'd love your feedback on that too.
Yeah, so great question. I think one of the things increasingly I'd be mindful of when starting these sorts of projects is what can be delivered in the real world and at scale. Because if you can only do something which can only ever happen in one place, say Vancouver, or it can only happen in Montreal, can only happen with, a certain coach who's a guru, who's a master coach, and so on, that's great for those few people who can access it in that location, but it really limits the extent to which you can scale these programs. But if we can start to think about what sorts of programs have low barriers to involvement, so low cost, and can be delivered on a geographically wide basis. And so with the PACE project that Audrey is going to be the lead coach with, is that there should be very few, if any, barriers to implementation. So the only limitation is internet access and having a computer with camera functionality. And as time moves on, more and more people are connected. Now, there are still some people, mainly in the older adult demographic, who don't have computers, but many will have iPads or phones if need be, and they can access these programs. And so really, the barriers to involvement are very, very low, which means that you can scale them. And also, if these can be delivered where people can access these programs in their own homes with limited or very few equipment requirements, it means that potentially you can deliver this on a really wide basis from coast to coast. You can get people to connect. If people who had these shared experiences, they were in the same regiment, say, or they were the same part of the world, say, on exercise or deployment or whatever, it means they can still stay connected. And we know that the data is compelling around when people feel supported and connected and they're doing these things together, they're just more likely going to stick with it. And so we know that a lot of programs, people will start up and then they'll drop out within a few months. And so one of the main reasons around why groups and group-based connectivity is that the groups have the power to bind people together. And so, but by doing this through the benefits of technology in 2022 and Zoom and Skype or other online platforms, these sorts of programs can really be delivered at scale and with really high impact.
Yeah, Rupert, go ahead.
If I just build on that, then I think you'd got some good anecdotal evidence from your Athena program that people loved it. It was useful. As we already talked about, the geographic disbursement of female veterans is it's harder to get them in together physically in a group. But to give the Athena program some real data that if it needed tweaking, improving it, what is the empirical impact that it's having, is going to be incredibly useful, not only for you, I think, and your sort of focus on the women's health, but other people can then take that and take it to Australia, New Zealand, England, South Africa, all these places where we've got very similar kind of veteran cohorts, and do something exactly the same. There's a blueprint for how you empirically affect veterans' health, whether it's through the ball hockey or touch rugby in South Africa or whatever. Here's a sort of a blueprint for how you can do it at low cost and, to Mark's point, scalable.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. That's that is my mission statement, is to fundamentally change the health paradigm for military members and veterans, period. Not Canadian specific necessarily. The community, and we saw that when we were deployed, we truly were this global warrior community. Like I literally was on base with the Americans. There's only 2 other Canadians there with me, although I didn't get to patrol with the Brits, like we were eating together in the same DFAC. Like it was just, it was our war. It wasn't just Canada's war. There was this definite unification, of allies. And because of the internet too, we were able to communicate with each other on a much broader scale than any other war in history. And this is just an extension of that. And that's why I'm so passionate about veterans causes, because we have similar experiences and we may have slightly different cultures, the experience is still relatively the same when we're deployed. And now hopefully we're going to be able to see the fruits of our labor to help improve our lives moving forward through programs like this. And you giving, a thumbs up to, my humble program here that got started out of nothing essentially, and being at the right place at the right time is really encouraging for the future to see how health in the veteran space is going to improve through scalable options like Mark said, like this. So Mark, I want to just kind of summarize a few things and make sure that I'm getting this right. So if we're talking about the PASS program, so folks that are interested in the PASS program, this is the male specific program, correct? That is going to be held in 9 locations. So you're physically going to play ball hockey. Additionally, to get all the information, it's www.passprogram.ca. Did I get that right?
Yeah. Excellent.
And so these 9 different locations, which I'm sure are all on the website, individuals that sign up, when can they expect to start essentially? Like once we have enough coordinators on the ground, is that something that you're looking for as well to ensure that we can run these programs in these 9 different locations?
Right. So what we're looking to do right now, we're recruiting. And so if they go to the website and there's an email address that's there, which is, I'll also repeat it here, which is pass.trial@ubc.ca. That's pass.trial@ubc.ca, but the contact information's on the website. So and we have an FAQs page which specifies everything that's involved. We walk readers through exactly what their involvement in the study will entail. For example, when people complete questionnaires, we pay them $10 for every questionnaire that they complete over the period of 6 months. We also doing fitness testing. And then we provide additional funds for that as well. So it's a funded project through Veterans Affairs, or courtesy of the taxpayers. So you're probably all paying for it anyway. So you're just getting your money back. So if they go to the website and they email us, and then we need to screen them for eligibility, which is, are they a veteran living in Canada, or and they don't have to be a Canadian veteran. They can be of any allied forces as well. Oh, cool. So Brits, Australians, get the word out. Obviously, because there's a security risk if they're on base, so they have to be from an allied forces. Probably Russians wouldn't be, not to get too political, but probably wouldn't be allowed.
Probably not today, no.
Probably not. Anyway, but so if they contact us, we'll do a screening process. So we have a team of students at UBC who are trained, and will screen them to check that they're ready to take part in physical activity. As long as they're ready to take part, they can get involved. We had, obviously we won't be giving any names away. These are completely confidential when people are signing up, but we had one inquiry saying, I'm a wheelchair user, but I'm a veteran. I'm keen to take part. Can I take part of it? And the answer is absolutely, you can do. So as long as they can take part in ball hockey, we'll accommodate. And that was always my vision when we started, that anybody with any kind of ailment could come along and just, if you got one arm, just hang out with a stick and just prod it at people, just to be part of the group. It's not about, there's nobody scouting for the NHL here. It's just people being, together. Yeah. And they'll benefit from exercise and physical activity and connecting and so on. And so we'll screen them to check they're eligible. And once they are, they'll complete the consent form, the standard processes that we do. So it's all been approved by our ethics board at UBC, and they'll complete a consent form, and then they'll complete a baseline questionnaire, and then they'll be scheduled for in-person assessments, which are happening in the last 10 days in April. And then with a view that the program will start in week 1 of May. So, but we really need to have them in the next few weeks in order for them to start in May. So that would be the goal. What I'd really ask any listeners is, please help us get the word out. Unlike some of our previous research, we've got the word out through national media, but it's tough when there's a lot of stuff going on in the world to try and get the word out, and specifically to what's a really specialized and unique group of veterans. So if you know someone, if you yourself are a veteran for either of the projects, either the PASS or PACE projects, contact us. The PACE contact is pace.study@ubc.ca. That's pace.study ubc.ca. The contact details are also on the PASS website, where we've informed people that yes, this program's for men, but we have this other program for women, and the contact details are there as well. So please help us get the word out. If you know anyone, even if you know someone who's elsewhere across the country, but you might think they might benefit from it, please circulate the details. I've posted an advert on Twitter, if you happen to do Twitter as well. My handle for that is Mark R. Beauchamp. That's at Mark R. Beauchamp. And or if you just type in my name to Google, hopefully you'll get it through the UBC, and you can just bombard my UBC email address, and I'm happy to direct you accordingly. So, part of this is, I've been in this research game for a while, and I'm really of the view now we need to do projects that are meaningful, that really substantively help people. We're not trying to do this to knock out academic papers, but what we do really want to do is to evaluate programs that have impact. And if it does have impact, we can then scale it. So, help us get the word out. This really, when the old adage of it takes a village, this really is the case, that it takes a community. And Rupert's been a great contributor to the project, and help us to get the word out, and hopefully the project will be a successful one.
Oh, definitely. I mean, just from the sheer response I've gotten from my community, the interest is definitely there. And now it's just a matter of making sure that they know how to sign up. And those links will all be posted in the show notes here. And this is going to be posted. Today is the 22nd, I believe, right, of March. This is going to be posted on my platform on the 23rd, tomorrow. So let's get a few more. We need a few more women in the PACE study in the initial cohort, and I'm pretty certain that we'll have that fully loaded by the end of the week. So that's pace.study@ubc.ca. I got that right?
Yeah. Great.
And the link will be there. So you send that email to the lead researcher, and we'll get you sorted out right away. Rupert, Mark, any final thoughts before we sign off today?
No, it's great. Thanks for having us on, Dave.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sincere thanks again. Greatly appreciated.
All right, guys. I love how two Brits are paving away here in Canada for fitness and health for veterans, Canadian veterans. It's awesome. So
I'm
thanks.
Canadian now, Dave. I'm Canadian. Don't so.
Yeah. So don't be fooled by the accent. Awesome. All right, guys. Thanks so much for sitting down and explaining the programs that you've got on the go. It's really cool to see that this is happening here in our fine country. And folks, don't forget, train hard, fight easy. See you next time. Peace.